Thank you, Ambassador Tai. I'd like to continue the conversation we had regarding shrimp a couple days ago. Just for table setting, a whistleblower has found unsanitary positions and rampant labor abuses in the India shrimp industry. The Department of Commerce has put on countervailing duties with rates of 3.89 to 4.72%. Now, I understand that CBP has a role in enforcing forced labor designations, and we recognize that the USTR has put out the CVD. My shrimpers are saying, my gosh, if I got to go to court to make this happen, I'm going to be out of business before there's actually relief. So if you were speaking directly to my shrimpers who are being put out of business by labor abuses and subsidies, how do you reassure them, my gosh, this issue is going to be taken care of and you don't have to spend millions on lawsuits?
Well, I begin by pointing to you, Senator Cassidy, and the fact that you and I have been talking about this. This has been literally one of your highest priorities since the day we have sat in this formation. You did share with me the report on the abuses in this particular industry in India. USTR is part of the Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force that was created as part of the USMCA implementing bill, but it goes more broadly. We sit on that alongside the Department of Labor as well as CBP. We can continue to prioritize the addressing of this particular issue. I think that with respect to our relationship with India as well, that has been evolving in very important ways. I do raise this issue with my Indian counterpart. It's not an easy conversation. We will continue to champion this particular issue because I take your point. And I think that, with respect to the logic of the trade policy that we are advancing, it is to ensure that we can champion the survivability and the opportunity to thrive for all of our industries, and that no one's asked to sacrifice themselves for someone else.
So if the shrimper watching right now would say, okay, out of all that, is there something in particular that we think will have an immediate effect? Or will it be more lawsuits and more kind of cajoling, but it's hard to have something hard and fast?
Senator Cassidy, it occurs to me that what we could do, hopefully fairly quickly, certainly something we could do at USTR, is to try to convene with our partners at CBP and also with yourself, and have a session where we can really probe what our options are in the very near term. I'd appreciate that. Because there's also a concern that WTO will push the U.S. to have a so-called pass-through consideration, that if the upstream is getting the subsidy and selling to the downstream processor who has to freeze it to ship it, that kind of subsidy that they're giving gets buried within that transaction. But that seems, if we're decreasing the price for the downstream guy to freeze and ship, it's still a subsidy affecting our shrimpers, if you will. Let me take that one back with my team and drill down on it a bit more. We are very, very vigilant when it comes to the WTO negotiations, and I appreciate the flag for you, and I promise you follow up.
There's also a concern from my rice people that they say that if it were not for Indian subsidies of rice, that they would have like roughly $850 million more in export. So if we can add that to the agenda, I'd appreciate that.
100%. That issue I know very well.
Going back to steel and aluminum, we've spoken about our proposal for a foreign pollution fee, which I've introduced with Senator Lindsey Graham, and I know that Senator Whitehouse has something similar on his side, in which we would put a tariff relative to the avoided cost of environmental compliance with international environmental norms, which would principally apply to China, but also to other countries. Just your general thoughts about that, because it's a little bit different than what you're negotiating with the Europeans, but I think ours is more robust.
I think the most important thing is it's consistent, and I think that progress you are making will help us with progress that we are trying to make, and I hope that vice versa it can help too, that this can be a virtuous cycle. So we do know about your legislation. We're very encouraged by it and want to continue this conversation with you.
I appreciate it. I yield.